my mindset around my leadership philosophy, and that is that, hey, we all struggle, but every struggle teaches us something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the gift. And leadership is sharing those gifts with others. And that's the essence of my book and my leadership philosophy. And that's just been the way that I've lived my life. But it was that moment that really helped me start reflecting on my life differently and realizing that it doesn't matter who you are or how you grew up or whether you were born into money or without money. Struggle so much more than just whether or not you have enough money to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
Struggle's about that pain that you feel inside. And, I think often in leadership and in business, people try to pretend that it doesn't exist. And what I want to do is I want to reframe how people view struggle so that they can view it as a sense of empowerment. It teaches us something every time.
Right. It's like, you've been in the field since you were a kid, and it's amazing how you get a seed, a little tiny seed. You throw it into the dirt, in the field, and then, you put more dirt on it, then the sun, then you put water, then you have other animals trying to eat them, and the seed, struggles since day one. And that's why the seed can give you the plant and eventually the fruit, the product. So in a way, I'm sorry that I'm bringing this analogy, but we are like seeds. We have to go to a struggle in order to grow. If we don't,
undoubtedly,
don't you agree?
Yeah.
I was listening to you, and I just wanted to share that analogy also. How did you get to Populus Group? How did you get from all that experience into human resources, business to business?
Yeah, good question. But, I agree with you. You have to go through struggle, pain, and suffering to get to wisdom, and there's no shortcut. And, after that moment, when I started reframing my struggle, after I got out of the military, where I was very fortunate to proudly serve in the Army, and I went to school back in New Mexico, where I grew up. And after that, I started my professional journey. And initially, I had a job with a Fortune 100 company in the Midwest. And it was my first job out of college. And I knew I had this entrepreneurial dream, and I wanted to pursue it, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had a couple of very fortunate experiences after college. One that I learned a lot from, but this company that I was with initially just wasn't a great long-term fit for me. I learned a lot. And then I took a job with another organization because I wanted to get into sales, and I wanted to get into, I wanted to control my own destiny, and I really wanted to learn how to sell. And I started with a great company back in the early 90s that was really small at the time. And for about 9-10 years, I was with them. And during that time, they grew from like 250 employees to, upwards of, several thousand. And I really cut my teeth in that HR services industry by taking a chance, leaving a very, good Fortune 100 type job and go into a smaller company that was a little bit more risky, took a significant pay cut, but I knew I was going to learn a lot and take control of my own destiny. And they gave me a lot of real fortunate experiences. And after that is, in 2002 is when I started my company.
So you decided to go solo entrepreneur. And did you get a mentor? Did you get help from investors, VC, something like that at the time? Or you just had enough savings?
When I started my company, all great questions. When I started my company, at the time, the company that I was with, they had been really good to me. And my industry that I was in was changing. And there were a lot of really good areas of focus in the in the recruiting and the HR services space that this company was focused on, and they're one of the best in the world now. And at the time, Fernando, when I was with them, a lot of our bigger customers were asking us, saying, "Hey, you help us with this problem. Can you help us with this? And how about this? And how about that?" Other connected problems. And the company that I was with was, politely declining, say, "No, we're going to stay focused on what we do." And the more those questions came, my light bulb went off, and we had some of the company that I was with, some of their largest customers kept asking, and I kept pursuing it with the founders. And finally, we decided it was best for me to, leave, liquidate my position with that company, which I did. And I took everything that I had accumulated and earned up to that point and invested it into my company with two other partners. So it was me and two other gentlemen that I started with that pretty much put every nickel and dime that we had into it to try to get it started.
So you took the risk.
Yes. And, Fernando, I often tell people those first 5 years is the most fun I never want to have again. Man, did I learn a lot of lessons.
Oh, wow. That's struggle, man.
Yeah.
Isn't it? You went to business school, or you just launched your company based on your own experience?
Well, I have. When I graduated from college, I had an accounting and finance degree, but I look back and I'm a huge advocate of education and college, and but very few schools teach you for the struggle you're going to go through starting your own business.
Right.
And I as an example of that, like one of the things that I've done, like my company's birthday is September 9th. And this September, we will be 17 years old. Mm-hmm. We were started in 2001. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sorry, we'll be 2002. We'll be 17 years old in September. And on our company's birthday, every year, I ceremoniously take out the original business plan and I read it. And Fernando, let me tell you, it's the best comic book ever written, because nothing in that plan came to life. And it's similar to life, right? Most things in life you plan work out differently. And a business plan is good, but it's all the unexpected turbulence that you're going to run into in those early years that really nothing can prepare you for that outside of your grit and your resilience and your ability to be a student and ask a lot of questions and have something that you believe in so much that you're never, ever going to quit until you make it through all that struggle and resilience.
Correct. And that's kind of the lean startup. I don't know if you are familiar with that philosophy, but,
Yes, very.
The business plan, okay, that's cool. But as you said it, but you actually went through, that's a fantasy book. So you can put whatever you want there, but the reality most probably is going to be different. And most probably the answers are not in your business plan, but are on the street. You have to ask people, but in your case, you learn from your experience. I got a question. Is there a correlation between studying, like attending business school, and success? Because there are many stories of self-made and even dropout from business schools that were extremely successful in life.
Yeah. Great question. Yeah. And, there's a lot of different, obviously different opinions out there, and there's no recipe, right? There's no formula out there for how to make it, right? So, but I will tell you, Fernando, I believe that I'll give you an example from my perspective. I think it's business school and getting a great education. That's all part of building a great foundation for your future, but I don't view that as a necessary box that you need to check, because there's other ways to get that education, right? And then in entrepreneurism, I think hands down, one of the single most underrated and underutilized competencies in entrepreneurism is storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about it, entrepreneurism and storytelling, and leadership, all you're doing when you start a company is you're saying, I'm going to write a story. And your responsibility as an entrepreneur and a leader is to narrate that story.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to narrate that story, the people that you bring in, you got to be able to tell a great story, cast a vision, share what you imagine, tell great stories when you sell your product, tell great stories when you motivate your people. And I see very few entrepreneurs that can tell a great story.
That's so interesting. I was reading also in your book, Tell Your Story. This chapter 20, it's one of the chapters of page 23. And it says, if you don't step up and tell the story that gives you identity and purpose, your people will be left on their own, trying to guess what matters to you and why. That's so deep. I love it. Could you expand on it?
Yeah. There's two things I'd like to highlight on that, Fernando. Is number one, that was one of my biggest mistakes as an entrepreneur. And, I just shared that very strong opinion around the power of storytelling. And I actually learned that lesson the hard way. Right? That bus story that you had me tell a while ago, it's a marker moment for me. And it's why I started my company. At my core and the purpose and at the core of the culture of the company that I've built, we believe that everyone deserves an opportunity to succeed. But what I didn't do during the early years, not until year 9, there wasn't a single person in my company that knew that bus story.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't told it to anyone. And finally, I was working on a project, and to film our culture code and codify our culture. And the person that was filming it asked me, "Hey, Bobby, you believe that everyone deserves an opportunity to succeed. Why do you believe that?" And I told him the bus story, and he recorded it, and everyone saw it not long after that. And after they heard that story, Fernando, they then understood who I really was and why I was so intense and passionate to build what I was trying to build. And up until that point, because I hadn't shared that story, they just viewed me as someone else who was just trying to build their company.
That's something that is so important because we come from a culture, the Latino environment, where, you are the boss and the employees are supposed to do what you tell them to do. But that's nothing to do with the emotional intelligence. And so the employees just react to the order and they deliver the best that they can, but they could deliver probably much better, with much better results if they would understand the soul of the order, the purpose of the company, and they feel that they belong to something that is bigger than just a workplace where they get a check and they go home and they spend it. So I think that's a big difference, correct?
Undoubtedly, right. As an entrepreneur and as a leader, you have to give people something that they can contribute to. You have to give them meaning. And I hadn't done that.
Interesting. Is that the most important quality for an entrepreneur, the one that you are singling out at this point, or there are others that you would say, this other is the most important quality and behavior an entrepreneur should try to achieve in order to succeed?
Fernando, that's the silver bullet question, right? Which one's the most important, right? I get that question all the time. Like, hey, what's the most important? Which is I think they're all situational personally. Fernando, There's no silver bullet. There's no chronological checklist. There's no perfect formula. However, I do believe that as an entrepreneur, one of the most important questions that you have to be able to answer for yourself is, hey, why am I doing this? And why am I going to go through potential insurmountable odds to create something? And how's it going to make the world better?